Hello and welcome to Defending Israel. I'm David Harris, and I have a very, very special guest. Ron Prosor is an extraordinary diplomat of the State of Israel. He has served as the Director General of the Foreign Ministry. He has served as the Ambassador of Israel to Great Britain. He spent nearly 5 years as the Ambassador to the United Nations, and now he represents Israel in a particularly important country, Germany. Ron, welcome to Defending Israel.
Thank you, David. Happy to be with you here.
Ron, before we talk about October 7th and its aftermath in Germany, I want to ask you about what it means for you, and I know it means a lot, having been named as the Ambassador of Israel, not just to any country, but in particular to Germany.
So my roots are in Germany. My father, Ulrich Proskauer, was born in Berlin, lived here with his sister Lieselotte Proskauer, and my grandparents Friedel and Bertold Proskauer. Bertold Proskauer, my grandfather, was a Prussian officer in the First World War, and in essence, just think of the long journey of the Proskauers turned Prosor. They left Germany at the end of 1933 after they burned books at the Bebelplatz in Berlin and moved over to Palestine. And for me to return as the representative of the nation state of the Jewish people here to Germany is both personal closing a circle, and it's a professional way in which I think that it's like, it's my calling being Israel's ambassador to Germany. And the German-Israeli relationship is very, very dear to me since I started my career in the Foreign Office.
So set the framework then, Ron. You said the relationship is very special to you. It goes even further. Under Chancellor Merkel, she defined the relationship using the German word Staatsräson, or as a matter of state. What does that mean today? And in particular, since October the 7th, have you seen that manifestation of that special relationship between Germany and Israel?
So Staatsräson basically means that Israel's security is part of Germany's national security. And it's Merkel who coined it. Afterwards, the present Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, repeated it. And since the 7th of October, we see the Germans, the Chancellor himself personally, the German Bundestag or Parliament, very clear on Israel's side, also not just in words, but in deeds. Thing that we need from Germany on the military side, on the medical side, on other directions. We see Germany very, very strongly on Israel's side. The fact that Germany is the only country that I know that the Chancellor visited Israel, the Foreign Minister and the Defense Minister, I think, speaks volumes. We have, if I would, brand it to you, after the United States of America, Germany is Israel's second strategic partner. And it's not just on the military side, but also on science, technology, university, youth exchange. It's quite a strong relationship.
Ron, the current German government is made up of three principal parties. And then, of course, there's the opposition led by the Christian Democrats, the party of Angela Merkel. Is the support across the board, or do you see some parts of the political structure more or less favorable to Israel today?
No, surprisingly, the support is across the board, both with the Social Democrats headed by Scholz, with the Green Party that has a vice chancellor and also the foreign minister, and also in the Liberal Party, the support is across the party divide. And and you can really feel it, and you can feel it especially on the political echelons. I think it would be fair to say that there's a difference between the political elites and the political system and the people of Germany. So there's a bit of a gap there. I'm not talking about different refugees and immigrants that came into Germany that are, nurturing hate towards Israel, towards Jews, which is something that comes out now very, very strongly in what happens after the 7th of October.
Ron, can we talk about sort of three elements of the German public? One is the extreme right wing, which has not gone away and found political expression, particularly in the AfD party. One is the extreme left wing, which also has political expression. And one is the growing Islamist, not simply Muslim, but Islamist presence in Germany. How would you assess each of those three since October the 7th?
So first, I think we should start by saying that Germany, after the Second World War, comes out with a clear narrative. War is absolutely wrong. War will not happen under any circumstances. We'll do everything to avoid it, ever. And a pacifist society is being actually, after 1945, here in Germany. Now, what happened suddenly when Putin decides to invade the Ukraine, they suddenly, because Germany had a complete different policy towards Russia, coined by Willy Brandt as the Ostpolitik, that Germany continued through chancellors and through time to really enhance. The minute Putin comes into the Ukraine, they understand that dialogue is not enough. They need to defend themselves, which for them is an absolute change in the way they see the world. And the chancellor coined it as a Zeitenwende. German Zeit is time, Wende is shift, a shift in times. Now, I'm putting it before because what happened through this is that Germany is already beginning to think differently on how it has to protect itself, allocating 100 billion euros for defense, in brackets, buying Israel's Arrow 3 system, and also on the energy side, saying, hey, we have become so dependent on Russia, we can't do anything because it was good for our own economy and industry. We have to change things, and they're doing it, and we are now in Germany in this transition period. Add to that the fact that Merkel opened the gates of Germany to immigrants and refugees from Arab countries. And when I say numbers, more than 1 million Syrians are in Germany, more than 500,000 Afghanis. So you have, and more. So you have a situation in Germany where this is used by the right-wing parties, AfD. Now I'm coming back to your question, and basically saying, look, the immigrants are getting everything, they're taking our jobs, we are paying higher out of our salaries for energy, for schooling. In essence, what has happened here, that the government embrace those immigrants and basically completely ignored us. The rise of the AfD in Germany is especially strong in the 5 new federal states from the east because of the connection with Russia and the feeling that they were looked upon by the West Germans as second-rate citizens. So in the sense, you have a combination of work, immigrants, and the fact that they are being treated as second-rate citizens that creates a polling in the East of nearly 30% for the AfD. But meanwhile in the ranch, what you have here is extreme left-wing that used for many years the issue of freedom of speech or freedom of the arts to, from an Israeli perspective, to be anti-Israeli, anti-Semitic, things that were very hard to deal with because it's always, the fine line. Where does the line pass? But now it's all out very, very strongly in the open. And something that you and I, David, could not imagine that today in 2023, Molotov cocktails are being thrown on synagogues, Jewish homes are being painted with stars of David, and Samidun, which is the PFLP in the sense, in other words, is running through the streets of Berlin, shouting death to Jews and death to Israel. This, I think, creates a situation which is completely new for Jews and also Israelis that feel unsafe in the center of Germany's capital.
So, Ron, you spoke about German, perhaps naivete in dealing with Russia and believing that energy dependence would create a more moderate Russia. Was there also perhaps a certain naivete in bringing in these large numbers of immigrants and believing that within a short time they would integrate and acculturate, including accepting the German collective responsibility for the relationship with Israel? What's happened?
So I think, that Germany under Merkel was, really looking at it from a very optimistic, positive way of thinking. We want to help these people under distress, and we'll open the borders. But opening the borders wasn't really checked with who you open the borders to. So you had people coming in, not just towards Israel, but the attitudes towards the West, towards democracy, towards women, towards homosexuals. And you created a situation where you have people here in Germany that don't have or didn't learn, it wasn't any part of setting the bar, a lower denominator or some denominator that basically says, hey, you've entered a democratic country, it's called Germany, here are the different things that you should just learn but internalize for you to be able to be law-abiding citizens. And this did not happen. I think there was a lot of goodwill. Good people that at the end of the day didn't understand that those elements are a Trojan horse of their German democracy because it uses and abuses the democracy in Germany for things which no German, I think, citizens would really allow or see as legitimate.
So, Ron, if the mainstream political parties don't cope with this problem that you've just described, it's going to benefit the extreme right wing. Is the political establishment prepared to face this challenge of strategies for integration and acculturation, or are they going to cede the field to the extreme right?
So there are changes. I see the chancellor has really come out, and the Minister of Interior, who's responsible for it, is talking about, punishing, taking, out of the law organizations like Samidun. So in the sense you have clearly Germany moving in that direction, understanding it has to change its laws. Don't forget that it falls under a Germany that in its constitution, because of the past, has made real firewalls in privacy between the BKA, which is the Bundeskriminalamt, the police, the Verfassungsschutz, which is like the FBI, and the BND, the Bundesnachrichtendienst, is like the CIA. They don't pass information. They don't dare check on people, on hurting their privacy because of the past. And this was abused. And I think they're coming back in finding ways to close those loopholes also on the judicial side, which will allow them to, to bring them to court or to justice.
Ron, if someone, for example, in a district like New Cologne, Neukölln, which is a very dangerous area for Jews to be found in, walks down the street carrying a Hezbollah flag, does that today violate the law in Germany? And if it does, will that person be arrested and prosecuted or not?
If he holds a Hezbollah flag but doesn't say anything, Hezbollah is defined as a terrorist organization in Germany. It's in its entirety. In the past, there was a differentiation between the military wing and the political wing. I think it took them years, but they really got the point that there's no real differentiation. Hassan Nasrallah was surprised to find out that they're making the differentiation like that. So if they run with Hezbollah flag, I think this is a violation. But if they run with other flags and don't say anything, this is, you can't put them to court. Even shouting Free Palestine from the river to the sea, which is from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean.
Meaning the end of Israel.
Yeah, the end of Israel. We are annihilating the state of Israel. This today does not merit putting them behind bars. This is probably going to change very soon, I hope.
Ron, in the meantime, you've had a very public disagreement with a rather prominent German. Christoph Heusgen was the diplomatic advisor to Chancellor Merkel for about a decade. Then she named him as the ambassador to the United Nations, where you also served. And now he's become the head of the Munich Security Conference, one of the best-known security gatherings in the world. Can you talk to us about what he said, what triggered your response, and how this unfolds?
Of course, here is the second TV channel in Germany, and Christoph Heusgen appears, and basically sitting there cold with no empathy, doesn't mention at all Hamas's massacre on the 7th of October, and sits there and in an arrogant way basically tells Israel that it shouldn't move ground troops into Gaza, and has become a military expert. And in a really, when you look at it and you see the face, is basically giving us advice on how to defend the state of Israel and the people of Israel, and talking as if nothing happened on the 7th of October. And this is the person who was Angela Merkel's top foreign relations advisor.
Right, the German version of, say, Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor.
The German version of Jake Sullivan. And you would think that he, would know something about German foreign policy. But under his command, he failed miserably in the attitude toward Russia in Nord Stream 2. And he comes and gives us advice on how to defend the state of Israel in such a way that you basically say, my God, and
not an ounce of empathy.
I think that Angela Merkel is ashamed of the way he basically didn't say a thing about Hamas, and talked about what Israel has to do, didn't say a thing about what Hamas has to do, and neither on the kidnapped people, on the way they created the massacre, what they're doing to their own people. So in a sense, it was really something that I not only had to respond, but I think every decent person, when he sees something like this, is shocked, dismayed, and basically shows, to my mind, his real face. Not every time in life. It's very seldom, David, that you suddenly see the true face of someone, and I saw that true face on the ZDF TV program.
Do you think you'll be able to continue as the head of such a prestigious organization as the Munich Security Conference?
I said, and I'll repeat that they themselves should think if under these circumstances he should continue heading the Munich conference.
Ron,
very disappointing.
Ron, you've also been quite outspoken on the UN Secretary General and his response to events since October the 7th. Tell us why.
Look, David, you know that I spent nearly 5 years at the UN. When you look at the Secretary General, in the Security Council, talking and not mentioning Hamas in a word, and only talking about, what Israel and Israel's fault, it's like, basically talking about trying to justify what Hamas did, burning Jews in their houses, cutting babies, chopping babies' heads off, mothers shot, with children before. It's a catastrophe. And when you hear him, saying that there's a reason that this has happened, and I'm saying, yes, the reason is that for years, Hamas has been, terrorizing the whole region, rockets, abusing humanitarian aid, mistreating their people, and the ideology that no one at the UN even thought of doing something against. When you look at it and you say, even in these circumstances, you have the audacity to sit there and not say a word about what happened to Israel and the Jewish people. Shame, 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 shame on you.
And I would add for viewers that the United Nations has never, and Ron knows this very well from his 5 years there, not before October 7th, not since October 7th, ever condemned Hamas in any resolution adopted by any UN body. Ron, we only have a couple of minutes left. I want to try and get quickly to two subjects. They deserve more time. But will anything that's happened since October 7th affect the way Germany views Iran? As we all know that Iran is centrally involved in organizing the assault on Israel and encircling Israel in the process?
I think that this process has started with the Foreign Secretary, Angela Baerbock, on the issue of how the mullahs and ayatollahs treat women, human rights abuse. I think they woke up, and both her and Ursula von der Leyen at the European Union are very strong in saying one has to put the Revolutionary Guards on the terror list, on the fact that suddenly Iran coordinates with Russia, and you see Iranian drones and rockets flying from Moscow over to Ukraine. I think this has changed the German attitude towards Iran. I don't think it's strong enough on understanding the ayatollahs of the ideology of the ayatollahs and the mullahs, that you basically cannot negotiate with them in the same way that you cannot negotiate with Hamas and this ideology. So I think there's a change there in the German attitude.
And lastly, on the subject of anti-Semitism today, Ron, has Germany come to understand? I recall back to Christoph Heusgen for a moment when Egyptian President Morsi visited. He represented the Muslim Brotherhood. He met Angela Merkel. And we met Christoph Heusgen right after that meeting. And he came to us and said how surprised he was to hear the anti-Semitism coming out of Egyptian President Morsi's mouth. My response to him was, I'm surprised that you're surprised. Is Germany waking up to the fact that anti-Semitism is now more deeply embedded and more widespread than it realized? It's going to take much more than statements to overcome this?
I think yes. The answer to that is yes. And you know, David, yourself, that Germany, after the Second World War, scrutinized its past on all levels, the public domain, in schools, at universities. So I think the Germans did a good job in looking at themselves in the mirror and scrutinizing this. I think they also understand that this anti-Semitism from left and right is something that they have to deal with. They nominated anti-Semitism, representatives nearly in every state, as someone who oversees this on the federal side. The government, the German government, is, really, I can see them. They really want to deal with it, and they also invest in trying to protect Jewish life here in Germany. So I see that they're really working, and they now understand it's not just education. You really need to create, punishment, and it's obvious, that things cannot be left like this. So I do see in the German public domain a real fear of how deep this is. And again, this is in Germany, and when Holocaust survivors are dying out, we have to find a way to really still remind ourselves, especially Germany and Europe and the world, that those horrific things happen, because I see in fake news that there are some also in the Arab world that say that the 7th of October didn't really occur. I see statements from Jordan, from Egypt, from even the royal family in Jordan, something that shocks me, but we have to be very, very clear and show the world what has happened, but also try and solve the problem, David, by really taking out Hamas's infrastructure and its leadership, and maybe then we can start something new.
Ron, thank you. This has been very important, and I think in some respects quite uplifting to know that Germany is playing the critical role you're describing. Thank you for joining us on Defending Israel. Am Yisrael Chai. The people of Israel live. This is David Harris. Thank you for being with us.